Today's episode is sponsored by Podcorn. Shanna and I have been really picky about who we would let sponsor us, and when Podcorn offered, we were super excited. Why, might you ask? Well, Shanna, let's break that shit down. I personally was excited because the Podcorn platform is super user-friendly, and I am definitely one who needs things simplified. Shanna, maybe tell our listeners what Podcorn is.
Podcorn is a way for people like Mandy and I to get sponsorship and make more money so we can continue our mission of putting light and love into the world. Podcasts of all sizes can browse and choose paid sponsorship opportunities right on their platform, set their own rates, and collaborate with brands directly without any exclusivities.
You know what else I love, Shanna Banana?
What's that?
Podcorn gives us the choice to send written proposals or to send a quick, authentic voice message. Voice message is definitely my style because it takes like 30 seconds. And considering we're so busy, this is amazing that they have that option.
Speaking of being authentic to who we are, I love that on Podcorn, we can search brands that align with who we are and what Sense of Soul represents.
Yes, girl, Podcorn is brilliant. It's an amazing way to connect with other podcasters and brands and to get money, money, money. I'm also digging that they give you guidance on what rates to charge, but leave it wide open for you to ultimately decide.
Podcasting takes a lot of hard work and time. So thank you so much, Podcorn, for sponsoring this episode and for creating such an easy platform for podcasters like us so we can continue our purpose.
If you have a brand you're trying to get marketed or you're a podcaster trying to build your listeners, you guys have to go check out Podcorn. Again, thank you, Podcorn, for sponsoring this episode. Welcome to the Sense of Soul podcast. We are your hosts, Shanna and Mandy.
Grab your coffee, open your mind, heart, and soul. It's time to awaken.
Today on Sense of Soul, we have Vikki Louise. She is a life coach, a time hacker, and a podcaster. Her podcast is called Fuck Anxiety and Get Shit Done. She likes to teach people how to manage their human instincts so they can blow their fucking minds and live an incredible life. And I can't wait because you speak my language. Welcome.
Thank you. Thanks so much for having me. So happy to be here. Is your language the language of curse words?
It absolutely is. And for some reason, when I say them, I feel empowered. And I don't know why. I don't think my mom likes it.
Listen, I heard this thing the other day. Someone told me, because I swear a lot and I apologize. They were watching me do a webinar with their husband and they messaged me saying, my husband said, oh my God, she swears a lot. It's just my natural. Sorry, mom. She said, listen, Tony Robbins apparently shared this story that he swears because it like alerts people. So it triggers something in your brain so you pay attention more. So I'm just swearing for the people.
There you go. You're doing it for the benefit of all. Fuck yeah.
Exactly. We're just doing this in service.
I love it. So, you specialize, or I say specialize, but which nobody wants to specialize in anxiety, but you talk a lot about it, as do we. And because we experienced it and didn't really have that kind of guidance as a child, what am I experiencing? I mean, I remember having anxiety, like some of my earliest memories and not knowing what the hell it was. Thinking maybe I was having a heart attack or an asthma attack, and I didn't have either. Couldn't even put words to it. Did you have anxiety as a child?
Like 100%. And I would even say to everyone listening, everyone has anxiety as a child. Everyone has anxiety. It's actually normal. We evolved to have it. But like you, it wasn't until I want to say 29. Like I knew what anxiety was. I definitely didn't have it in my head, right? It was like this super extreme, non-functioning anxiety that I'd heard about. That's what got the press. And then I was living with my partner, my now husband, and I started waking up every day into like sweats and exactly what you just said, Shanna, about the exact reaction of like mind's racing, sweating, dizziness, nauseousness. Don't know if that's a word. We're gonna roll with it.
I love when I make up my own words all the time, and I tell people, hey, if you know what they mean, then they should be a word.
Yeah, so good. We're expanding vocabulary. We're doing a service, swearing and making up words. You're welcome, listeners.
Yes.
So I actually was waking up like that on a daily basis for about 2 weeks until he turned around to me and said, how you wake up in the morning, like something's changed. I don't know what's going on, but something's definitely going on. Because I was just like, oh, and then I just get on with my day and blah, blah, blah. And then I spoke to a friend who actually happened to be American, which I think you guys speak more about this than I ever saw, because I used to live in the US and obviously grew up in England. And the US is just, there's more conversation and dialogue around it. And she was like, it sounds like anxiety. And I was like, well, no, because I'm getting on with my day and everything. And it was just like mind blowing. And then I went to Dr. Google and I was like, okay, let's figure out what it is. And I searched what is anxiety. And I won't forget what the two things that happened next. First, the definition came up, which is like anxiety is a feeling of worry, overwhelm, and apprehension. And I looked at the screen like, what are you talking about? That's like not explaining anything. What, like I've got anxiety and you're telling me that I'm supposed to be able to, it's a feeling of feelings. This is not useful. And then the second thing was I read, 1 in 5 adults will suffer from an anxiety disorder. And my background is finance and numbers and statistics. And I was like, 1 in 5 of a population size of 200 million or 100 million if it's adults is not a disorder, it's a trend. Why do we have anxiety? This is not like the way that I'd spoken about it or heard about it. Everything was as though it was like this disorder and this thing that was super wrong, versus actually when I started down the path of research and discovery, like we evolved to have anxiety, which is basically hormones being released into our body that meant we could run faster, longer, and feel less pain, which isn't so useful with our modern day anxieties, but used to be really useful for our predecessors.
Wait, isn't that crazy how we've evolved all of these like patterns in our brain? We just come here with them. I feel the same thing about fight or flight. Like, why do we fear everything? Why is that a natural thing to fucking fear everything? And also with the anxiety, I really felt that once I got that diagnosis, that's who I was. That labeled me, that explained everything in my life. Now I accepted it as part of me. I felt it was within me. And I thought for sure it's going to be generational. And so we're all stuck with being stressed out forever.
Yeah, which is so interesting because now we know how changeable the brain is. And exactly like you said, it's like our brain is this supercomputer that's been like wired for a different time. Because let's be honest, our brain's been around for like 40,000 years in its most modern form. And most of that was before, not just before technology, I mean, before homes, I mean, before even huts, I mean, before like any kind of wheelbarrows. Like 40,000 years is a long ass time. And our brains basically evolved to do their one job really well, which was to keep us alive. And for most of those 40,000 years, I'd say like 39,000, anxiety was really useful in that like immediate hormone generator that would allow us to physically get out of fucking danger very quickly. Say like, and perceive potential danger. That was like a super skill.
Yeah, I loved on your podcast how you're like, it's that cave woman part of your brain. And it's like, you needed that shit because there might be a lion that's about to tear off your face. But now today, when we're eating when we're eating our DoorDash food and sitting in our Uber, we don't really need that anymore. So there's nothing wrong with us. We just have to rewire it. Is that correct?
Yeah, exactly. And I love that you even mentioned this because the first most common dip that I see happen that costs the most is the self-judgment story, the shame story, what we make it mean about us, what we make it mean about, about the anxiety. The anxiety is bad, we're bad. And obviously the more we are spending time in those stories, the worse we're feeling, which is why, we spoke a little bit about, and Shannon shared about how she had it when she was younger and didn't really know, like at a basic level, can we just learn about our brains a little bit in school, like not pH tables or whatever, I can't remember what they were called, but unfortunately where I catch most people and where most people are spending way too long is not even in solving the anxiety, it's in all the judgment and the shame. There's something wrong with me, what's wrong with me, I'm different, that whole story. So before we even go to like how can we solve the anxiety, what we want to start with is the anxiety about anxiety.
Yeah. Why have we called it this name? I mean, just the word anxiety fucking sucks, right? It gives me anxiety just saying anxiety. So in my house, we've changed it. We don't say anxiety. We say that we have extra energy on our chest, because really, truly, that's all it is.
Yeah. Yeah. And I love that you said that, because to go back to when I was looking for that definition, right? And it's so vague, the definition that you'll find online. Like literally, we could have a room of 1,000 people all speaking about anxiety and speaking about different things, because like there's such a spectrum. So one of the first things that I would recommend anyone listening that experiences anxiety do is define it for yourself. So I love that you guys have done that in that way. But really, when you know exactly what's going to happen, you're not feeling like a victim to something happening to you, even if what's happening might not be what you would have chosen. It's like, oh, here's anxiety. This means, so for me, it meant I was going to feel dizzy, very hot, nausea. So I knew to like grab open a window, sit down and put my head between my legs, which meant that I could contribute to recovery way better than like, I don't know, is it worry? I don't know. What do you think? Is it apprehension? I don't know. I feel overwhelmed. Like that's just going to cycle it out more. So I love that you do that with your family.
Can you I'm spoiling your whole first podcast that you put out, but I definitely want our listeners to go listen to it. But can you share with them the story about the first time you took your anxiety and used it to empower you?
Yes. So I was already a coach, right? I already knew the tools and like my mindset and all that shit that feels really good when you're like at home in your office or like whatever. And then it comes to like game day. And for me, I've always been like a chatty, confident person, but like our brains aren't wired to have us expose ourselves to so many people in one go, especially in real life. And I was doing a presentation. I was walking up on stage after I'd just like calmed my nervous system down, ready to go. And it was like I took a step right at the point where people could like suddenly see me. And I literally, even speaking about it now, I'm like, it was like whoosh, sweat. I was like, what is going on? Like literally my face was red, sweat, like my heart was pounding. My brain was like, what are you doing? What are you doing? What are you doing? Turn around, turn around, turn around. Like I was like, oh my God. I look out, like people can see me. I'm like, well, like I have to keep moving now. And everything went super slow motion and really horrible. And I was like, I don't have time to like grab a pen and a piece of paper and write down what am I feeling in my body and where, and all these tools that I was used to using. So I was like, I guess we're going on together. And I was like, well, there's no point arguing with it. That was the first thought. And then immediately afterwards it was, oh, like my brain literally thinks I'm going to die. And it's got this like fucking superpower that's so strong and so capable and so on my side of just wanting me to stay alive that it's like literally, Vic, you've like fucked us over. We're taking over, grabbing the reins, and it's using like all of its force. And when I saw how actually powerful it was and the physical things that it was making happen, suddenly I was like, oh my God, I've got this like super machine on my side. Like I'm set for life. Instead of arguing and fighting with it, I was like, oh my God, I'm fucking Beyonce. Like everything felt like tingly. I explained it as like glittering, you know, like I could feel every pore on my body was like electric.
Yeah.
So that was it. Yeah.
You know what's so funny is I look at it now that way as well. I mean, I look at anxiety as a message. Like yay, thank you. That something needs attention. Because, so many times back in the day, I used to say, well, I have anxiety for no reason. I just have it and I'm happy as hell and I'm having anxiety. I just have it. But that's actually not true. I think that it is, there is something there, and it's our bodies. If you use discernment and sit with it, there is something there that your body is trying to tell you. It's like your mind, body, and soul are working together to form this energy to get your attention. Like, hey, something needs to change, or you need self-care, whatever it is. And we're just not taught to listen and trust ourselves.
Yeah. And I think a lot of that happens with people because of the judgment that they have around it. So like, it's not me creating it. It's happening to, I swear I'm not doing it.
I'm not the one it's happening to me. Right.
Yeah. Versus like actually why. And it's the same. I call them like bad emotions. The people listening can't see me, but like my inverted fingers. I don't know. I don't know what to call it actually, but the quote.
Quote.
Yeah.
Yeah.
like all of our so-called negative emotions, in fact, all of our emotions full stop, that's their job, is they are indicators. They're there to tell us like, oh, this is in line with what you want to do. This isn't in line with what you want to do. And with anxiety, you know, like what happened to me walking on stage, our brain kind of built this like programming system around exposing ourselves to crowds of people. And so the programming just needs updating, but we can't always just update it by sitting at home, closing our eyes and wishing for it to be different, or writing like exactly like listen, I'm a coach, I have lots of writing tools and techniques that I teach people. But sometimes you just got to go do the fucking thing. And that's like the quickest way. And that's why, you know, I speak about time hacking now. It's one of the big things of like, but what's the quickest way to get me there? Because there's like the long way that maybe is more comfortable, and then there's the quick way that maybe is going to get me there faster. And it's not to say faster is always better, but just even knowing you have that choice changes things.
Okay, so just to clarify then, long term would be journaling, long term would be sitting with it and discernment. So what are the tools short term when when you need to time hack?
Yeah, do the least comfortable things, like, and it can even I call them like discomfort opportunity bubbles, and they can show up in the funniest ways. Like we live near a park, and I was walking near a park, and there's two paths, and one there's like a crowd of people, and one there's no one, and my brain's like, obviously we're going where there's no one, and I'm like, obviously we're not, we're just gonna have to go the other way, sorry brain, but like I just want to on purpose do what is most uncomfortable for you. Signing up to speak at a big event, going live on Facebook. Like there's just so many little opportunities every day that we don't even realize we're feeding and fueling our old programming because we're making the choice that's the most comfortable. Like, you know, I don't work one-on-one with clients anymore, but when I did, one of the big blocks for people would be like, I don't know, I'm just not sure. And I'm afraid of failing. And I'm like, yeah, that's what's stopping you all the time. I'm not going to be here and tell you, I'm not going to make it more comfortable for you. Like that's the opposite of what we're going to be doing together. We choose discomfort on purpose because of who you become when you stop believing your brain's limitations. So we shouldn't be looking to make things comfortable. I think it would, you know, people would ask me, could they pay in installments? And I was like, no, I know it's highly uncomfortable, but it's designed that way on purpose. Like everything that I do is designed that way. Sorry, people, it's uncomfortable.
Yeah.
When you were saying short term, long term, I'm thinking, okay, so to me, that means, okay, we take a antidepressant or we take a quick fix with like a Xanax. Because literally that's what I wanted, because we want to get away from our pain super fast. It's like the first thing our brains do. They're like, okay, stress, leave.
Yeah.
let's not experience this. And I know for myself, I mean, I was on medication for a good 7 years. And what that did to me just numbed me. It affected my memory, my weight, I mean, my health, everything about me.
Mm-hmm. Vikki, you said something in another one of your podcast episodes about, you know, what makes you happy and how happiness is an emotion and it's not permanent. Well, neither is anxiety. So just teaching people that this is not a permanent feeling and that there is no lion that's going to come out and eat your face off. So starting with that. But I do love that you talked about that number you saw and how it made you realize it's a trend, because I feel like it is such a trend right now. I'm seeing with like 11, 12, 13-year-old kids, especially bragging about having, you know, medications for their anxiety and the CBD. And I think you said 1 in every 13 people throughout the country have anxiety. I mean, I'll sit in a room with like 20 girls, and I think every single one of them will say they have anxiety.
Mm-hmm. It's just interesting because, as you say, it's like, but how do we know that we're all feeling the same anxiety? You know, I don't think there is a one size fits all for anxiety solution. And that's why I'm liking and enjoying seeing the alternative things come up and come out. And like what Shanna spoke about, medication does work really well for some people, but often it is treating the symptom, not the cause. And a lot of what's out there does do that, but we are starting to see alternatives. I even think I spoke to someone once who was like nutrition-based solutions. Like there's so many things happening. I think the world, like Shanna mentioned at the beginning, like it's going to a really interesting place. We're like opening up more independent people, more people that have experienced it are creating the solutions instead of you have to go to medical school for 7 years and then do, you know, so it's like there's more access to information and solutions and alternative solutions than ever before. So I think that's all amazing. But again, like if we just changed our dialogue around anxiety and we didn't allow it to be such this taboo thing, it would lose its excitement, and then we would probably speak about it less, right?
Yeah.
How important is bringing awareness? I mean, for me, it was presence. It was actually to learn how to be present. Does it still come out? Because I mean, anxiety still comes up for me, you know, and I'm just like, oh, where is this coming from? I thought I was doing so well.
But even like notice the way that you say it, like I thought I was doing so well, as though there's something wrong with it. Like I'm in a place now where I like don't even see it as a problem. I'm like, one of my more recent podcast episodes is called Anxiety is Fuel. So it's like even going to the place of like not creating it on purpose, but once you have it, knowing like for me, anxiety. So I've not had morning panic attacks since June 2019, which has been amazing. So I definitely don't miss those, and that's not what I'm referring to here. But like when we choose to do something like start a podcast, launch a business, go speak on a public stage, go live on Facebook, go on a first date, like meet someone we've not met before, whatever it might be, like that's us stepping out of our comfort zone, which is basically why anxiety was created. So we are inviting anxiety in. And when we see it as like, we work with it as, oh, this is its job, it doesn't need to stop me, then we're just going to start changing our relationship. The problem is not that we have anxiety. The problem is that we give all of our attention to reducing anxiety, which means we don't get shit done, which means we fall behind, which means we create more anxiety. Or we attach our self-concept to it and we make it mean we're an anxious person and there's something different and wrong about us. Like the actual anxiety itself is vibrations in our body. Like what, you know, like what you said about the feeling on our chest. Like we actually, and this is the whole premise of my podcast, is fuck anxiety and get shit done, because like, hey, the anxiety can be there and you can still do things. And I had a client once and she told me, you know, like, I don't know, like I spent like 2 hours sweeping everywhere and just trying to get rid of the anxiety, and then I didn't get my work done. And I was like, yeah, of course. Like, and she didn't get rid of it. And I'm like, we're not supposed to get rid of anxiety. We're not supposed to live without any anxiety. And I'll give you an example here. If you are walking down an alley late at night and you want the ability to get out if someone, you know, attacks you or whatever, you are going to want that ability to have those hormones to run faster. It's like we've got this dog, right? This really cute dog in our house, but it's also an alarm dog, not a cute dog. We've got a dog in our house for security. That's what I'm thinking of. We had one, Alfie, right? And his job is to bark when people come late at night and the alarm's off and everyone's asleep so we can be safe. But he also barks when the mailman comes, and he also barks when someone drops off their kids. And like, what can you do? He's gonna bark. We just don't need to. Every time he barks, we're not like, get like everyone alert. We just don't need to react to it. It's just the dog barking, and that's what we forget with anxiety. Is sometimes it's just the dog barking. It doesn't mean there's actual danger. And the dog can bark and we can continue with our day. We can continue making lunch. We can continue with our work.
Yeah, I love it. Yeah. You know, what's really funny is that what is unfortunate that has happened also along with the trend of anxiety is that we're now diagnosed with it forever. Every time I go to the doctor and I see all these diagnoses, things that I have for life on my medical stuff, I'm like, who isn't stressed at one point in their life? Who doesn't experience symptoms of fibromyalgia at one point in their life? Okay, because I see pain, anxiety very, very, you know, on the same, well, not injury pain, but pain as in, hello, you know, you're not doing anything for me. Even like last week, my kidneys were hurting. I haven't been drinking enough water. It's like these things are all messages, but then we're stuck with the diagnosis for the rest of our life.
I don't know how it works in the US. Are you?
Yeah, it does. So it doesn't happen like
follows your ass forever. It's like,
sorry,
dude, mine must be like 20 pages freaking long. I'm surprised they haven't come to my house and arrested my ass and locked me up in a mental institution.
I know, but guess what it means? It means that I can get any kind of pain medicine, I can get anxiety medicine and all that for the rest of my life because there it is in my chart.
Yeah.
I mean, we wonder why we have so many issues with pill popping.
right? It's wild.
Yeah.
Or sometimes some people experience the opposite. If they have that in their chart, then they're flagged. So it's almost like not looking at it as a monster. So like kind of embracing it and saying, this is how, God gave us this for a reason. God gave us this emotion for a reason. So now let's befriend it. I will say my mom's is pretty extreme, and I think hers is due to trauma that's stored in her soft tissue that she hasn't dealt with. And so it gives her, the restless leg syndrome came right after my brother passed away. Her anxiety is just this trauma stored inside of her.
Yeah, often anxiety is unprocessed emotion that we've just spent so long fighting down. So that's and even then it's an indicator for us that we need to process the emotion.
Yes.
So are we going to do it or not? I love what you just said. I think anxiety is like that person that like gets a bad rep, but they're always trying to do right, even if they're not always right. They're like trying. Right. And we're just like, fuck you. And they're like, I'm fucking trying here. Like, I'm like, they're willing to get this bad rep, to be bitched about, moaned about, argued with, fought with, shut off with drugs, like all this stuff. And they're like, it's still here fighting to keep us alive.
You know what? I have an idea. We could call anxiety the sober best friend. And then you have the drunk best friend. And I want to talk about the drunk best friend.
Basically, that voice in your head that's like always just chatting shit and always just having bad ideas. I call it my drunk best friend. Some people call it like their roommate or whatever, but it's like they've got your best intentions. They just shouldn't be in the driving seat. Like she like wants to eat at 2 a.m. She's like, get up, get food. She's like always like wanting to send messages to the wrong people. And she's got all these stupid ideas and she just like won't shut up. You're like, oh my God, now is not the time.
God, that is hilarious. Because I'm picturing Mandy right here back in the day.
Totally.
I love that analogy.
Oh my God, but you're hilarious. You know what else she says that is so funny? Fuckstrated instead of frustrated. Fucking love it. Oh my God.
Fuckstrated.
Some of these notes
God.
are taken from our podcast.
I know.
So what's the difference between like having anxiety and having that signal to when you get to the point where you're depressed?
Well, anxiety and depression, I would say, are like two different emotions. And I do think they can come together, but they don't always come together. Like, I also know people that do similar work to what I do with anxiety, with depression as well, where it's like, at what point have we built like such a disempowering, shitty story around depression that if someone experiences depression, they're like, oh my God, I must hide and sit in shame and there's something wrong with me and I'll never come out of it, versus I am a human that experiences depression and that doesn't define me.
They're totally two different vibrations too. Mm-hmm. Just thinking about that, just like depression is such a low vibration and where anxiety is like this excessive vibration.
Mm-hmm. I read an article a while back about, when your mind sees a sign that says, beware of dog on a fence. You don't really think about the sign, but subliminal messages can trigger that flight and fight without you even knowing it. Those chemicals start to release. So how can you control something and change the wiring of something that you don't even know is happening?
Right, which is why the goal is not to never have anxiety. Because if the goal is to never have anxiety, we're like going to have to always be on alert. Like you said, all of those subliminal things. You can be walking and see like a blue car that you like don't even really notice. That happens to be a car that like when you were younger, you saw a car accident. And you're like, the anxiety came from nowhere. I don't know how it happened. But you don't always need to know how it happened. Sometimes you can and sometimes you can't. It's more like, now it's here. What do we want to do about it?
Yeah. Shanna brought up what her and I talk a lot about, and that is just bringing that awareness to the feeling you're having, just being the observer of your thoughts in that moment. Can you talk more about that?
Yeah. So one of the first things that we spoke about was, so there's 3 steps that I think are like super clean, simple power steps for anyone experiencing anxiety. And the first is what we spoke about, which is like, what is happening in my body? So I'm feeling my heart pounding, feeling hot or cold. I'm feeling my stomach swirling, like describing it. And the second thing is why, like what's going on in my brain? What is my brain actually telling me? We spend so long like arguing with our thoughts or like resisting them or judging them or fighting them. And that's why I call it drug best friend. It's like we're on the same team versus just allowing and understanding like what is actually going on. Because another thing our anxiety does is like it says something bad's going to happen. Like let's say someone's worried, been worried the last year about losing their job. They're like, I'm going to lose my job and then it's going to be over. You let the anxiety finish. You're like, okay, but then what would happen if we lost our job? Like, well, we would maybe have to move back in with our parents, and then we would maybe have to apply for another job, and then we would get another job, and then we would move back out again. Like, you know what, like it doesn't finish the story. So you just want to give it chance to speak and say everything. Like the words themselves are not harmful, they're just sentences. And we're so afraid sometimes to like admit I call it our inner crazy, to admit our inner crazy and those sentences in our brain, and we make them mean all these bad things about us when we have like 60,000 thoughts a day, and every one of us has been programmed the majority of that 40,000 years in the same conditions, which means we all have the same, I call them shitty thoughts. So like our brain convinces us that it's so unique and that we can't let it out and that it means bad things about us. But your sentences in your brain don't mean anything about you until you attach meaning to them and make them mean something about you.
Attachments. It's not just to I have something, so it's going to make me feel better about myself, but also attachments to material stuff, attachment to people. Attachments cause so much clusterfuck in our head.
Have you guys seen on Netflix the documentary Minimalism?
No.
Oh, highly recommend. But obviously it's all about detaching from our like material attachments. And I'll tell you, so we've had an interesting few years because we're currently living in France. Before this, we were in England. Before this, we were in Austin. We went to Austin like 2 days after we got married. So that's like all within the last 18 months. So it's been quite a whirlwind. And, you know, one of the things that's happened by default by moving around. So I think we've lived on 4 continents now. Because before that, we were in Israel. Yeah, 4 continents in the last 2 years.
Yeah, I can relate. Yeah.
You need some grounding.
Right.
Yeah, you need to kick your shoes off and go walk in the park and sink your feet in some dirt.
Listen, when we got to France, we were like, we had an Airbnb and then we thought we would just find a place, but we didn't. So then we had like another Airbnb. Now we're in like an apartment we signed for a year. I'm like, we've arrived. It's the longest we've lived somewhere the whole time. So it's really nice. We really appreciate that. But back to attachment, it's like you realize how little you need when you don't get to have the things that you want. And like, we had this like magic mix cooker thing, and I was like, oh my God, it's so good. Like, no, it's not here. We didn't bring it here. Like, there's just all these things that we attach to, we attach our safety to, we attach our meaning to, and it is material things. It can also be other people. I'll just share for everyone listening. Like, we moved to France during COVID for circumstances where we didn't choose it, but it happened. I don't speak French, and neither does my husband. We don't have any friends here. It's literally the worst time to meet people. Things aren't open. You're not going out. Like, I've had to almost also build my identity. I'm super social, but detached from having like a physical community, which actually, to be fair, lots of people have dealt with this year, whether they're here or not. But it really is like, we just don't really have anyone.
Yeah, no, I understand that because I'm a very, very social person, and I get a lot of my happy from being around other people. I love people. Feel your pain. Gosh, that must have been such a struggle. But I think that a lot of people are awakening and they are choosing kind of to minimize a lot of their stuff. Okay. So you teach people how to use their most powerful tool that they've been given, and you say that's the brain. I say it's like your soul and your intuition. Mm-hmm. What do you think?
I think that we don't know the power of our brain. We just know that we use a tiny percentage of it, because it's like actually wired to conserve energy and be lazy, and so we're up against the machine itself. I don't think it has to be either or. I think we have no idea how powerful the brain is. We're just getting started, but the truth is neither of them are measurable.
Right. And we just had on Evan Alexander. As a scientist, it's amazing to hear, someone actually say, because like we had it wrong. We thought that the brain created the consciousness, but actually it's the other way around.
Mm-hmm.
And he believes that the consciousness is the soul. But the bottom line is that not just the soul, but they all have to fucking work together. We're in this 3D body. So mind, body, and soul have all got to step up.
The way I spoke about it is in like the brain is the most powerful tool, is like tool for us to use.
So we're a tool.
Okay.
So I wonder if we're even saying the same thing.
No, that makes sense. And you know what, Vikki, I love that you talk about that, because why don't we take the time to learn more about what is really, truly like running our bodies and our life?
Yeah.
And you reminded me of me and Shanna. We'll get like this one little word and we go to Dr. Google and it sends us down this rabbit hole of this amazing knowledge, right? And that's what you did with just the simple word anxiety. Have you found any other things that, you know, sent you down that same rabbit hole that you've learned amazing things about?
Do you have any things on aliens?
No, but that was my husband.
Come on,
he's big into that. He's like, aliens live amongst us. I'm like, okay, maybe. I'm not again. Who knows? Maybe we're the fucking aliens.
Yeah, right.
Like where my work is centered more now has been on time. So I see like anxiety, like what I said about how quickly can we move with it or overcome it, that kind of thing. But really what I've realized more and more as my work has evolved with me, and that's why I do time hackers now, where I really help people achieve big results in a short amount of time. Because and now I've said this, you'll notice it, how often in conversations we give time, responsibility for all the shit and credit for everything that's good. Like, oh, it was the right time, hey? No, it wasn't the right time. Someone probably like made shit happen to make that result. Or, you know, time heals all wounds. Time does not heal all wounds. Otherwise, you would say all wounds would be healed in 3 days.
Or it wasn't our time.
Yeah. Like, it's just not the right time. It's like the time is right when you decide it is. Like, I've taken on anxiety. We've kicked it in the ass. I've put out a lot of amazing content. And now I'm like, I'm going after time.
I loved how you talked about time hacking when you make decisions, because you totally called people out on it. You were like, that it's bullshit that you're saying you can't make a decision. And you talked about how when you are not making a decision, you're actually feeding your fear and your self-doubt. Can you talk about that?
I agree.
Yeah. Yes. So let's say we're faced with a decision to like launch a business or stay in our job, for example, something probably quite common this last year. And we're like, I don't know, ooh, like, shouldn't I? I don't know, like, I'm just gonna like give it time and think about it. But what happens is our brains, these supercomputers, are habit builders. And what you're asking it to make a decision between is doing what you're already doing, where it knows that you are safe and comfortable and alive, which is all it cares about, or doing something new, even though it could be more fulfilling and better and empowering and like way better. Your brain's like, yeah, but we don't know about it. So we end up sitting in indecision. And the longer we sit in indecision, the longer our brain, this supercomputer, has to talk us out of doing it. Well, what if you don't make money? What if everyone sees? But you can't tell people on Facebook, but what will this person think? And that person that you went to high school with, and like, or it's going to just be like, but you remember that time you tried that lemonade stand and it didn't work? You're just not cut out for entrepreneurship. But also you're a procrastinator. You need to be managed by someone else. You need or it like literally gives it more time to come up with more reasons to keep doing what you've always done, which is highly motivated for you to do. So whenever we aren't making a decision, we are fueling the decision that we are in.
Yeah, and you already know. It's kind of like the coin flip. You know, you're like, should I choose the red car or the blue car? God, I'm gonna flip a coin. I really hope that it's the red car. I really want the red car. Well, then fucking buy the red car. You already know. We just don't trust ourselves. We've got to fucking overthink everything, which causes anxiety.
Yeah. And we forget that like we can make a decision and then make a different decision. Our brain convinces us that making a decision is a big massive thing. Where we're locked in for life. But like, I can tell you guys, I used to work in finance. I left it to go work in tech. And then I went back to finance. I was like, oh, I didn't like that. I went back to finance. And I was like, wait, this also isn't right. And then I went into personal development. Like, it doesn't fucking matter. As long as you are making decisions that are creating change, you keep moving.
I love how you said, and by the way, when you tell me that you can't make a decision, you not making a decision is making a decision. So you're full of shit.
Oh.
Hey, you're deciding to not do anything.
I would hate to fight with you, Vikki. I would absolutely hate to fight with you. You would give me the biggest mind fuck. Because I'm not fast like that. It's not that I'm not making decisions. It's just my brain's like, okay, wait, compartmentalize everything that's going on. And then somebody's already like gone.
You want to know it though?
You quick-witted people. You and Mandy. Mandy's just like that too. She's quick-witted.
Well, it sounds like Vikki, yours came from from knowledge and research. And, that's a deep thought. If you think about it, if you choose not to do anything, you just made a decision. So hello. And people need to make these decisions in order to get into action. And you talk about that. You talk about how what you do as a life coach is you want to empower people to get into action. And that is, I find, the hardest thing to do. Why is the getting into action so hard? And how do you help them get into action?
Yeah, it's like the same thing. Super, super repetitive, super simple. We're wired to conserve energy, avoid failure, avoid rejection, and avoid exposure. Action is going to just open us up to all four of those. Our brain's like,
because if you give yourself that time, like you were just talking about, we're talking about judgment. Oh, now we're judging ourselves. Look, we failed at that. You give yourself too much time. So just go and do it. Take the leap of faith.
Yeah. And what a lot of people do is like all or nothing syndrome of like, I call it like the fad diet mix. It's like, okay, I've like never eaten healthy. And then now I'm just going to like eat a cucumber, or like, intermittent, like something really extreme. Our brain's like all or nothing, instead of like when I wanted to start doing yoga, I was like, I'm just going to do 10 minutes a day, every day for a year, except weekends. And like, listen, there were probably a few days when I didn't do it, but I just kept getting back to it and kept getting back on the horse. And like, there were times my brain was like, this isn't worth it. Like, you need to do it for an hour. Everyone's saying to do it for this. And I was like, I'm just going to do, I made it so easy that by the end of the year, I was like, oh, like, not only had I built flexibility in my body, I'd also built such trust in myself that I would see something through, that then I was able to expand my morning routine 4 things at once, which is actually quicker than trying to do 4 things at once, where, like, as Shannon said earlier, where you have zero trust and you're going to like go for it for like 3 days and then collapse and go back into old patterns. So
and
I would
it sounds like you also had to stick like a sock in your drunk best friend's mouth during that process.
Yeah, or just like, eventually she gets bored. She's like singing to herself. I'm like, all right, you carry on, love. Like, she's hungover in the morning, so I would do it in the morning. Yeah, we're way more likely to pay attention to. It's kind of like, I don't watch the news, and my husband does, and I say to him, like, they did this study years ago, and they saw that people were more engaged in the news when they were, had fear-inducing stories. And so they started with, that's why our news is so negative and shitty, because the job of the news anchor, whatever you would call it, channel, is not to give just and righteous information to all. It's to get fucking ratings.
Yeah. So do you ever see them? I'm looking at them and you can see how excited they are that something horrible happened. Like all of a sudden they perk up, and like on a nightly basis, it's not always like that. They're usually just like, you could tell they're exhausted and tired, and then something bad happens and they get all excited. I'm like, oh my God, this is so crazy.
I wanted to read something real fast called The New Prophet, and it's a book by Kevin McNevin Clark. He was a guest on our podcast. His book is so beautiful. I just noticed he signed it and he said, Mandy, the cage is open. And on the front, he has like a dove flying out of a cage. But he writes about fear, and it's quite long, but I wanted to read like 3 sentences. He says, fear, what a strange thread woven throughout the tapestry of our existence. Fear whispers in your ears. Fear speaks with a sweet tongue, spreading its lies for control. Fear tells the follower that to follow fear is to have control, but this sweet-tongued manipulation is to gain control of you. Wow, right? Because that's truly what fear does. it gains control of us and every decision we make. So it's being able to just let go and trust and fly out of that cage, right?
Yeah.
You know what I appreciate about you, Vikki, is that Shanna and I are really about going back to the beginning of time. We do a lot of ancestral work. We like to look at patterns that go in epigenetics. And I love that you've gone back to the very beginning and looked at why our brains were the way they were and why and how they evolved, because that just brought me so much understanding when it came to the anxiety and when it came to the flight or fight. And I'm sure there's a million other things. It's like, duh, why didn't I ever think of that? Like, why don't we ever think like time changes, things change and things evolve. And we were given those things for a positive reason. Now we just need to learn to implement them in a new way with our new surrounding and our new life in 2021. So thank you for that.
Yeah, of course. And I would say to like anyone listening and to you both, like the world is moving at such a fast rate now. It's a lot on our little brains. Even though our brains are powerful, they're like kind of freaking out. And when we freak out, we tend to retreat more, which is like what you said about trust versus fear. Like, how can we build more safety? It's probably not going to be by getting pissed off at our brain or pissed off at our anxiety or judging ourselves. You know, even Mandy, even just then when you say like, oh, why didn't I think of that? It seems like it's a throwaway comment, but underneath that is the like, I should have thought of that. It's like a judgment. And so really, I know it was one of the first things that we said, but if there's one thing to leave everyone listening today, it's like, check in where you are judging yourself. That's always going to be the distraction. We always have two options in any problems that arise. One is go to the solution and one is go to the judgment. Our brain wants us to go to the judgment.
Stop letting your brain control you. You do have a witness. You do have a soul that can actually, and it should be, that is your purpose. You're not here to be a brain. Literally.
Yeah.
And I love how you said that the brain was a tool. I feel like the body is as well. We need to control these things and not let them control us.
Yeah.
That's it completely, because our brain says words, we like listen, but our brain is literally a tool just like our hands, and we can make our hands go left and right, and we can make our brain focus on the screen and then focus on the sounds and then focus on the touch.
I wanted to also talk about really fast, Shanna, because I know you'll appreciate this. Shanna was so busy this morning and last night putting out our podcast today. She's amazing. I just want to give gratitude to Shanna right now at putting out so much.
I'll accept that.
No, girl, I know it's hard work. But Shanna, so one of her episodes, and I don't remember which one, Vikki, and if you do, please say it, because I would love the listeners to go listen to it. You even talk about how like acceptance from others has evolved, because back in the day, it was literally life or death to get accepted into tribes. Mm-hmm. And so you had to have people like you or you would die.
Wow.
Yeah.
You're trying to figure out why it is that we have these primal things about us.
Yeah. So it's called Other People's Opinions, I think. And it's like, I think it's in the first 20 episodes. Basically, we evolved in tribes. We needed tribes to survive. There was no surviving in the wild by yourself, like Vikki just fucking around, like trying to forage and build. Like that was not going to happen, which meant that we wanted to get the approval of others. We did, which comes into like a lot of what I speak about with the exposure as well. So we really want other people to like us. We definitely don't want to piss people off, because we literally rely on others for our literal survival. That's how we evolved. And then what I speak about in the episode is add to that how we are conditioned as kids in school. You girls sounds like have kids, so you maybe see this. It's like, be nice so people like you. Don't behave so the teacher thinks you're a good boy. Like, we're literally told to behave in certain ways so other people will have opinions of us. So evolution plus socialization and programming and school systems and all of this stuff. Yeah, we just think that it literally doesn't matter. Some people will like you, some people won't. Where you focus your brain on the people that like you or the people that don't is going to 100% create your results.
Think that our younger generations are more open and loving and kind and support that. I feel like they are. That I hope that we're all moving in a different direction with that and we're evolving out of that. But I do believe, because I have healed through my ancestry, self-love, acceptance and trust and all these things. But I had to be aware of them. So I like what you're doing. You are bringing awareness to people that, you know what, these things are within us, not from even this lifetime, right? This isn't something that maybe you experience and can find in your inner child. They go very deep. And so do you feel that just with the awareness of this, just that you, once you were able to connect that and have that awareness where you're like, oh, well, that stops with me.
I think it's awareness and application, and those are the two things, because it's like, you have to remember, it's not like, oh, I know something once and now it's solved. We're going to keep fucking up. Like I actually had a client before this, and she said something and I was like, oh, you thought you were never going to fuck up again? No. As we get smarter, our brains get smarter, and like it's a constant.
Yes, you could have all the knowledge in the world, but until you actually take action, does it turn into wisdom?
Right, exactly. And like, even for everyone listening to this podcast today, I would say pick one thing and implement it today. Yeah. Like one thing that we've spoken about. It doesn't matter what it is. It's like,
and if you can't think anything, maybe that means you just need to sit with yourself and be present.
There you go. Well, Vikki, you've been so awesome. On Sense of Soul, we do this thing called Break That Shit Down. And now it's time for Break That Shit Down.
I love how I was like, is it okay if I swear? Just everyone, I would say, you are far more capable than your brain wants you to realize when it's fighting for your excuses and fighting for your comfort. And I really think every person in the world is uniquely placed to solve unique problems based on you seeing them, because we don't all see the same things. Just like lean into that. You have like a gift and you are capable of it.
Thank you so much, Vikki. It's been a pleasure.
I love it. I will say for our listeners out there, if you're in the car and you only have 15 minutes, or if you feel like you have a busy life, her podcast is amazing. She gets the message out. It's short, it's quick, and it is full of so much knowledge. I absolutely loved your podcast. Can you tell our listeners where they can find you and what you've got going on right now? Because don't you also have like a free anxiety workbook?
Yeah, obviously the podcast, Fuck Anxiety and Get Shit Done. And also there's a free Fuck Anxiety guide, which is like 1-2 paragraphs of a little bit of the science, really easily understandable. And then the questions that I used to ask myself and using my clients to pull myself out of anxiety and really identify what was causing it. So that's vikkilouise.com/guide, but it's VIKKILOUISE. And then also Instagram, Vikki Louise ____. I also have a lifetime access group coaching program called Time Hackers, where I coach my clients to get more done while working less without hustling.
Thank you so much for coming on.
Vikki, thank you so much. I've really enjoyed our conversation. I've learned a lot, so I appreciate that.
Thank you both for your time. It's been really fun. I feel like I'm just hanging out with some friends.
Exactly. That's definitely how I've felt.
Bye, lovelies.
Thanks for being with us today. We hope you will come back next week. If you like what you hear, don't forget to rate, like, and subscribe.
Thank you. We rise to lift you up.
Thanks for listening.